Hey guys, welcome to the Seed Storyteller series with me, Sarah Davison-Tracy, and
Sarah Jackson.
thank you for
Casa de
joining
Paz.
us with Casa de Paz. Sarah, thank you for joining us. And we just want to make sure that y'all know what we are going to be talking about and who this amazing woman is, Sarah Jackson. And we want to welcome you to the Seeds Storyteller series. And we really hope and intend that this conversation will inform, inspire, ignite something in your understanding of the world and your part in it. And Sarah and my heartfelt passion is any doing is done together whenever we can. So we have some really tangible, specific ways that if you get inspired and you want to join what Sarah's up to, there's lots of things in the write-up. You can go down the Casa de Paz, Sarah Jackson vortex of connections, which is highly recommended. And we are going to end our time today. This will last about 45 minutes, and we'll be ending our time with a place of pause. And for those of you that's brand new to you, it's just a moment to catch your breath and practice rhythms of soul care that will fuel this work that we're all committed to in the world. So Sarah, thank you for joining us. So glad to have you here, always.
Thank you.
And for those of you who if I'm new to you, my name is Sarah Davison-Tracy, and I'm an author, a speaker, and founder of Seeds of Exchange, where this is what we do. We have conversations as a community and find ways to tangibly inspire us making a difference in the world together. So we're just going to dive in and get right to it. So Sarah, we are talking today about something called the 3-minute hug at the border of the United States and Mexico, which until you told me about it, I didn't know anything. So will you share what is the 3-minute hug and your personal experience and connection to this annual event?
Sure. So right now, as we speak, there are thousands of people living in the United States who don't have the privilege to be able to travel to Mexico to see their family physically, face to face in the same space. They may be undocumented, and they know if they go to Mexico and try to come back, it will be impossible, or they could potentially be arrested by ICE. And so for them, they are stuck in the United States without being able to see their family and give them a hug. And so in El Paso, Texas, there is a nonprofit that works in conjunction with Border Patrol to set up these events, which they call the 3-minute hug. And it's an opportunity for folks in Mexico to come to the border, and then folks in the United States to also come to the border of Texas and Mexico. And for 3 minutes, the border is actually opened up so that families on both sides of the borders can embrace one another. And I, much like you, had no idea that the 3-minute hug existed. I was just going about my normal life in Denver, and one of my friends, Cecil, reached out to me, and he is a photographer who has been photographing this event for years. And he knew my passion for families being together. And so he invited me to go down and experience it for myself. And he was really smart, because when he told me about it, he didn't tell me too much. He just said, it's an event where the border opens for 3 minutes so families can hug one another. And then at the end of the 3 minutes, they say goodbye and they go back to their regular lives, whether that's in Mexico or in the United States. And so I went down there not really knowing logistically how do they do it, or what space are we in, how close will we be to the people who are hugging. And I'm glad that he did that, because it, the least amount of expectations, right, that I have is always better in all areas of my life. And when I went down there, I was, I'm still months later processing what went on in my heart and in my head and in my gut.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those experiences that changes you forever. Some, it breaks you a little more in some ways, and then in other ways it emboldens you to do something that maybe you wouldn't have done if you didn't know about it before. So I'm thankful for that trip.
Yeah. And that was in November of 2019, right?
Yes.
Um, so you, when you got there, knowing nothing about, well, knowing a very bare bones something from Cecil, what are, for those of us that haven't been there or are just learning about this from you, what are a few moments that you remember being gripped by when you stood there with these families hugging each other and waiting in line and just the whole experience?
Yeah. I think for me personally, the extremes of life, so the very, very young babies and then the very, very elderly who
Yeah.
are in wheelchairs, those are the folks who immediately caught my attention, because for me, I have been able to be very close to my family when a new baby is born, and very close to my family when someone is transitioning out of the earth into their
Mm-hmm.
new home. And to realize that I've always had that opportunity
Yeah.
to get on a flight and be wherever it is that I needed to be, whenever I need to be there. And that there are so many people who don't have that opportunity, especially in those two huge moments in your life where a new baby is born and you just want to snuggle them up and hold them, and so they know how much they're loved.
Yeah.
In the same way with folks who are preparing to leave the earth,
Yeah.
that those are the moments where for me at least, my heart aches the most when I know that folks can't be next to the ones that they love. And so, there would be little babies being passed around, and you knew that this was the grandmother or the grandfather or the aunt or the cousin. It was their first time to hold this little baby, and they only got them for a couple of seconds because they were just being passed
Yeah.
around.
Share the baby.
Yeah, the baby probably was feeling like they're the star
Oh
of the world, and
gosh.
they were, for that moment, they were the
Yeah.
center of the universe of that family. And then, and the way that it actually worked out is that I had a press pass, so I was right there with the families, uh,
Well,
close enough to give them a hug if I wanted, but that was their 3 minutes, so I didn't give anyone a hug,
yep.
obviously. But I was right there, and so I could look to my left and I could see a family embracing a little new baby full of life and all new things, and then look over to my right, and here would be a family embracing the family elder,
Mm-hmm.
the leader who's kept that family together for decades. And the dichotomy of seeing both at the same time, and it reminded me, every day we live in this tension of joy and sorrow and pain and
Mm.
suffering. And how can it be that you're here in this physical space and you're experiencing both extremes at the same time?
Yeah.
And that's sometimes a very difficult concept to grasp, but I was there and I watched, and while I was watching these families hug each other for the 3 minutes, and when they said 3 minutes, it was 3 minutes.
So I
And
was going to ask that.
yeah,
That's not like a metaphorical
no,
that is literally 3 minutes.
it is literally 3 minutes. And one thing that I didn't know going into it is that they actually go in waves of groups. So they've
Mm-hmm.
got like 20 families on the Mexico side, and they give them the numbers 1 through 20. And then they find the counterpart family on the US side, and they give them 1 through 20 the number.
Yeah.
And so then when they say, okay, groups, families 1 through 20, both groups line up. And it's actually, this year it was at a riverbed. And so on one side of the riverbed, but the river was dry,
Yeah.
maybe just a tad bit muddy. But the families would see their other family, right, on the
Oh my
other
gosh.
side of the riverbed, which
Yeah.
was 10 feet away. I mean, really, all you had to do was sort of lean over and touch, and you could touch your family. But everyone was so respectful because they knew that this was the one chance that they had. And they knew that if they did something to jeopardize this event in the future, that not
Yeah.
only were they potentially putting themselves in a situation where they wouldn't be able to hug again next year, but that they would also uh, put that reality for
Yeah.
other families. And so
Yeah.
everyone was very respectful, um, and and at the same time there were folks who were completely overwhelmed with the emotion
Mm.
of wondering, this could be my last time, this could be my last hug. And and even though they released from one another when they called 3 minutes is over,
Mm. Mm.
um, I saw people, a couple of folks who just collapsed to the floor, to the ground, because their legs couldn't
Yeah.
keep them upright any longer, because it just all of those emotions at once just flooded out. And um but yeah, kind of rewinding and going back to the very beginning, when they bring the groups of families on both sides of the border, and you could see folks just waving and, oh hi, and yeah, my name is, whatever, Sophia,
Mm. Mm.
because maybe it was the first time that they'd met someone that their family,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, had introduced to the family. And so then someone is keeping time of the 3 minutes. And so they, on the big megaphone, they say, okay, hug each other, abrazalos, like hug each other. And then at the end of the 3 minutes they say tiempo, time. And then there were maybe a couple of the waves. I mean, there were many waves, and maybe a couple of them where the person had to remind them, okay, tiempo, But then they separated.
Mm.
They would walk with each other as far as they could get before they had to cross, to get to their side of where the country that they're living in. Um, and
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it's still, like I said, it's happened months ago, and it's still something that I think about every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things I remember, because you'd sent an email out, um, a gripping email out, I don't know, was it the day or within a day or two after you got back? And I was like, not even finished with it. And I had tears rolling down my cheeks. And I was like, I texted, I was like, okay, I'm in. I want to do something. Like, because you said something like, I don't know what to do, what we're going to do yet, but we are going to do something.
Yeah.
Um, and so I remember one of the stories in that first note I got from you was just being so struck with by how, like, story after story of what it took for people to get there. People were selling their sole, means of financial stability on their chickens and their goats. And so one of the things that brings us here together today is, for those watching the premiere or the replay during the month of March 2020, like the moment to do something. One of the somethings is we're going to do a fundraiser together, with the goal of raising $2,000 so that two families can get to the border without. Your passion, Sarah, was to say there's so much that's hard about this. Let's take the money part out so that you can focus on just being together. So will you talk a little bit more about kind of the seed of that, and that's been kind of growing in the last couple months, and you know why you think that's important, and share a little bit of your heart on why we're doing this and what we're thinking.
So each family, on the Mexico side of the border and on the US side of the border, they are responsible for covering the expenses
Yeah.
of getting physically first, right, to the border. So
Mm.
you could be coming for hundreds or thousands of miles just to get to the border. And that's expensive, right?
Yeah.
You have to find money to either get a plane ticket or to take the bus or to fill up your car with gas, right?
Yeah.
Or and I should say, and you're also taking time off work.
Yeah.
So you're losing some wages that you may have earned, you know. So it's and then once you eventually get to the border, you've got to eat and you have to find a place to stay and all of those
Yeah.
just traveling expenses.
Yeah.
And for me personally, my brother a few months ago was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And as soon as my mom found out that my brother was diagnosed with cancer, my parents were actually living overseas in Austria at the time. And they've since relocated to Denver to be with my brother. But my mom, as soon as she found out that my brother had cancer, the first thing she did was look for a flight.
Yeah.
And she knew that, you know, our family, I mean, we're not millionaires by any stretch of the imagination, but she knew she had the money to get here.
Mm.
And that wasn't a worry in her mind, you know? And that made her decision and the momentum of needing to get here go faster, because she didn't have to pause and think, do I have the money? Or it was just a no-brainer. I'm going to get a ticket. I'm going to be with my family.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, this trip is too expensive to even consider.
Mm.
Or if they can afford the trip, it's most oftentimes a financial stressor. And so folks will do things like you mentioned earlier, where they will sell something that they own that was a possession to them,
Yeah.
whether it's a chicken or a piece of jewelry or tires from their car, whatever. They'll sell whatever it is that they need to sell to get the money to make this trip. And the director of this event, Gabriela, she told me that sometimes families will reach out to her and tell her, by the way, we had to do this in order to come up with the money to make it to the border. And Gabriela heard these stories of tremendous sacrifices that people were making, and she wanted to be sure that they understood this is only 3 minutes. We hope you
Yeah.
understand that even though you've had to go through X, Y, and Z, it's not going to give you more time with your family. It's not going to, you know, oh, we know that you sold your car to get here, so we'll give you 10 minutes instead of the 3.
Right.
No, 3 minutes. And every single person that Gabriela explained that to said, we know, and we're going to do it. Because for them, that 3-minute hug, you couldn't put a price tag on it.
Yeah.
And so when Gabriela started telling me these things,
Yeah.
like my brain immediately started like running to, well, what is there something that we could do so that folks who are coming to this event, financial worry isn't even on their brain. Like my mom, she knew when she needed that ticket, she could get it, right? And so what we're doing is we are fundraising for $2,000, like you mentioned, so that we can find one family through Gabriela, who organizes the event, who's really, this is a tremendous financial burden for them. And we can take a little bit of the weight of the heaviness of this experience off of their backs. Yeah. And allow them to enjoy the trip as much as they can without ever having to be worried about, am I going to be able to eat tonight, or will we get to a hotel? Can we afford the hotel? So when we have the money, and once so the event is expected to happen in the springtime, but there are a lot of parts that are moving around because you're working with Border Patrol and they have their policies. And so once the date is set and registrations are open, meaning we've got the green light from Border Patrol that this event is happening, because unfortunately there have been times where this event has been promoted and people have started registering, and then a couple days before
some glitch
and the event is off. So once we know for sure that this event is happening, which more than likely it will. We've already spoken with Gabriella, and she has offered to help us find that family who we will give this gift to, and then what we will also do, Cecil, he's an incredible photographer here in Denver, and we will actually fly or drive, whatever, to the family in Mexico that is the recipient of the love from Denver or from wherever people choose to donate from. So we're actually going to go to the family and journey with them to the border and take photos along the way as these, those mementos of priceless moments. And so we'll take pictures of them packing up and on the road, and we're almost there, and here we are at the border, and oh, there's my family, I can see them, and the moment they hug, and the moment they have to say goodbye, and then the moment after where the dust settles and they're left with this experience of seeing their family again, and maybe for the last time, and we want to be able to tell that story because it's a powerful story. And when we hear stories like that, for me at least, my desire is that when people hear stories, that it will be a catalyst for them to say, well, what can I do? And so we tell this story. I mean, maybe down the road, every church and university and book club and volleyball team, everyone in the country can create a fundraiser to give the gift to every single family who is a part of this event.
Yeah.
I could see that happening, right? Let's start with one and see how it goes. And then next year, maybe 2, and then the next year, 10, and then 40. I mean, it's really not a significant sacrifice for us. It's not,
Right.
And so for me, it's kind of like a no-brainer. Let's do it.
Right. And thank you for correcting me. I think I said 2 families. So one family, $2,000 is our goal, is our intention.
We also want to provide that experience for the family. If we can find a family that on both sides of the border they're struggling to make it, then that's where the 2 families will gift for the family on the U.S. side and the family on the Mexico side.
Yes. And one thing that I think is so just in your blood is, in your life kind of mantra or passion, is families belong together. And that's this kind of the mission for Casa de Paz, right? And so with that, it's just like, of course, this is part of who you are and what the Casa is doing here in Denver, loving on people from around the world. And one thing that I love about this, and my invitation to those that are watching and listening, especially if you are from a political party, or you have an idea about this wall that we have going up in the United States, the thing I love about this, and my invitation, is that we can see and acknowledge that this is beyond a political party sort of, this isn't like a hippy dippy thing. This is a human, like, families belong together. And so no matter what you believe about this wall, Republican or Democrat, outside of the United States, can we say, for this is about one family getting to have 3 minutes with their family on the other side of this border, and all of us using our own pain to fuel this choice. Like, Sarah, your brother's cancer diagnosis and the story of your mom flying from Austria, that's a human reality. A mama wants to be with her boy, and will do anything and everything to get there and move and all of the things. So can we just see this as family, sisters and brothers? And listen, if this blows up and we raise more than $2,000, then we will. Sarah is the sort of person that makes the ripples go on and on. We'll just find another couple families. So we're just starting with one family in Mexico and one in the United States. They're one meeting, their family's meeting, but let's like share it, share the love. And the other thing I want to say is for those that are watching in a replay after March of 2020, the Casa is going to be around as long as it is needed, which make sure you go into the write-up and find the many other ways that you can be a part of what Sarah and our team is doing, because there will be ways that you can volunteer and donate and be a part of this incredible community for many years to come. Let me do a time check. Okay, we have a couple minutes. So Sarah, will you share? I just so love your heart and your story that has led us to be sitting here and having this conversation. Will you give folks a little bit, like the teeny tiny context of how you began the Casa? And her whole bigger story is also included in the write-up. We had another conversation last year that gives a full 45 minutes to that. But will you just share what the Casa is and how you came to be doing this work?
Yeah. Pretty much my whole life, I grew up not knowing about immigrant detention, that families were being separated, that immigrants were being held in for-profit prisons. It just wasn't my, not like I woke up in the morning and Googled immigrant detention. It just wasn't something that I was going to do, right? I just had my normal life. And I was actually working at a church in Colorado Springs, got an opportunity to take an all expenses paid trip to Mexico through Catholic Charities. They were putting a group of folks from Colorado Springs together to go down to the Mexico-Arizona border. And the trip, the heartbeat behind the trip was to learn, history of immigration. So what are some reasons that immigrants are coming to the United States? What are some reasons that folks are being deported from the United States? But the real heartbeat behind the trip was, as people of faith, because this was a group from Catholic Charities, how do we respond to immigrants when they come to the country that we live in?
Yeah.
And that trip changed my life because it was the first time that I met real people, sitting across the table, having dinner or lunch or breakfast and hearing their stories of the immigration policies affecting their families' lives and the amount of suffering that they were under. And also the amount of joy that some people had in the part that they found that they wanted to play in the reunification of families. And so I knew on that trip that my life was going to change. I didn't know how, but I knew it was going to change. And I am not a fan of change a lot of the time, right? But in that uncomfortableness of change, this idea of starting a hospitality home, Casa de Paz, House of Peace, was given to me from the Creator. And I appreciate that so much, because what we do now is we do almost every single day have an opportunity to put a family back together again. So after that trip, I moved up to Denver. I rented an apartment right across the street from the Immigrant Detention Center, and I opened it up. I lived there, and I just decided to share my home with folks who might need a place to stay for a couple of nights. So right now, 8 years later, we have a shelter for families who are driving in from out of town to visit their loved ones who are detained, like the Ronald McDonald Home, but for immigrants separated by detention. And then we also have our post-release support program. So when immigrants are released from detention, they've won their case or they're released on bond, they have a safe place to come and rest for a little while as they make plans to get home, wherever their family is. And we do this all as volunteers, which I'm really proud of, to say that nobody is doing this because they're getting a paycheck from it. We're doing it because we know it's the right thing to do. We know that this is how we would want to be treated if we were in their shoes. And we know this is the right way to treat people. And so our volunteers, which we now have literally over 2,000 volunteers who have gone through our training, They are doing it all. They're picking up folks who have been released. They're taking them to the casa. They're having dinners and making dinners with them. They're helping them find a bus ticket or a plane ticket. They are bringing them to the airport. And for the folks who are still detained, we also have a visitation program. So our volunteers go in and just spend time with people and let them know that they're not forgotten about. I'll read this. We had a lawyer who had a couple of clients who were detained in the detention center. And he asked us if we could start visiting his clients because they didn't have any family in town. Their family lived in another state. And so they were just stuck in detention for an indefinite amount of time. And you know, we are created for community. And so he knew that if they were able to have an opportunity to make a new friend, that it could provide hope for them. And so our volunteers started visiting, and this is what he wrote to me a couple of weeks after folks started visiting his clients. He said, thanks again for all your help. I cannot overstate how amazing it is to have people from Casa de Paz visiting people in detention. I noticed a significant difference in the hope in the eyes of both of my clients after the visit started. They told me after their visits, I'm so happy because now I know I have friends outside. And that's not rocket science, right? That's spending an hour with someone and getting to know them and asking how their day is and hearing their dreams and if they want to share their story or their sufferings with you. But it's just acknowledging that, you know, like you said earlier, whether you're whatever political spectrum you come from, at the end of the day, I am a human, you are a human, our, you know, the immigrants in detention, they are human. And I believe personally that we all have the spark of God in us, that God has created us, and that we are worthy of all of the good things, of all of the dignity, of all of the worth, not because of what we've done, but because we are created in their image. And it shouldn't matter if the person that you're spending time with and acknowledging and respecting their dignity has a glass window and you're communicating with them from a telephone. At the end of the day, we can still acknowledge their humanity, whether you, whoever you choose to vote for, if you vote. Hopefully you do. But yeah.
But what a beautiful thing to be able to say, like, how do we create spaces that bring us together amidst different, you know, people we're going to vote for, different, you know, perspectives about immigration, detention, ICE, all of these things that can tend to just keep people. This is a place where it's like, I believe that it's just as you said, it's dumbs down all that stuff, and it just says, look, in this moment, this is about humanity. This is about love. The world is full of so much that we can do nothing about.
Yeah.
So much. And this is one thing that I think it's incredible privilege, and it brings a lightness to my heart to be able to say, here's one thing, one family. What's your Mother Teresa quote that's one of your favorites?
If you can't feed everyone, start with the person right next to you. I'm paraphrasing that. But if you can't feed everyone in the world,
right,
you get it, right? Like most of us don't have the resources to do that. Yes. But can we share one meal with someone? Yeah, we probably could.
Yeah.
Not probably.
So,
most of us most of us can.
Most of us can, and the good news for all of us is I believe that some of the light and the joy that happens, that we're looking for in the world, it happens when we do this, because we're doing it together. It's what we're destined for. I just think the lights of our lives go on when we do. So so I believe this is a call to all, not just some. So please join us. And before we wrap up, that is a beautiful segue. We're going to take a moment to practice a place of pause, just a moment to catch our breath. And I'm going to read an excerpt from my book, but I forgot to mention also in the write-up is a link to Sarah's book that is going to be coming out. Is it June or July? July! In July. And you can pre-order it. I pre-ordered mine. You can, get it done so that it just whooshes your way when it comes out. And it's called The House That Love Built. Is that right?
Yep.
And she's going to be going on a book tour. So maybe if she's in your city, get there, because, well, if you want buckle up, your life will be changed, but get there. But before Sarah and I even kind of started talking today, I had picked out this excerpt from my book called Called to Craters. And it's about this man, Vedran, in Sarajevo. And I'm not going to read the whole story, but the heart of it connects with what Sarah was just talking about, and that is Sarajevo was under siege. There was a whole line of people that were bombed while they were waiting in line for bread in his neighborhood, and he was crushed. It was not just civilians do not belong in war zones, but that's how it is around the world. And so he went back to his apartment and he's a musician and artist, and he grabbed his cello and he went into the bomb crater and played his cello every day for the amount of people that had been killed, which I think was 24 days. And he wanted to use his art, his gift, his tool to bring hope and peace. So wherever you are, I just want to invite you to if you can, close your eyes, kind of soften your muscles. We move so fast and often relentlessly without a moment to pause. So this is an invitation just to take care of your soul and your mind and your body. So I'm just going to read this little excerpt here. Vedran says in this interview, he says, "I am nothing special. I'm a musician. I'm just part of this town. Like everyone else, I do what I can." Vedran's cello was a simple, everyday, ordinary object. In the face of unimaginable and continuous death and destruction, he picked up his tool, gave what he could, and tended to what was right in front of him. You also have a one-of-a-kind gift and purpose. You might even think of it as a unique song you will sing or a tool you wield as you move through your days. Whatever it might be, you have something that will bring beauty, companionship, or meaning into the bomb craters and war zones in the lives of those around you. Do you know what your cello tool is, or can you hear your unique song yet? Have you not sung a word or a note yet, or have you been chanting it your whole life, quietly or at the top of your lungs? Listen for the melody. Pause, listen, wait, look, pay attention. The melody will come. Play it, sing it, live it. And just if you can, keep your eyes closed, and I just want to invite you to take a moment and surrender whatever is on your to-do list, whatever is burdening you. Just take a moment to be, and to kind of exhale all of those things. Be at peace. Breathe in love. Breathe in belonging. Breathe in healing. And just be. And I've asked Sarah if she'd share a place of pause story with us. Because as you have heard, Sarah's call in the world is to some pretty serious places and with people who are in some big pain. And I know Sarah. I'm blessed and fortunate beyond words. And I know that she is fueled for this by soul care. And so I just asked her to share a story from her life this week, um, for us to inspire us a little bit. So, what do you got, girl?
Well, I actually didn't tell you that I did this before we talked, but I hope it's okay. Rachel Held
Yes.
Evans is for me, one of my personal heroes. She passed away, I think, a few months ago from an infection, but she was very influential in specifically folks in faith communities and encouraging them to see the world as it could be. And
Mm.
yesterday was the beginning of Lent, and she has a blog post that she had created before she passed for questions to ask yourself during Lent. And the one that I asked myself this morning actually was, from her blog, is there something in my life, a habit, a grudge, a fear, a prejudice, an addiction, an emotional barrier, a form of excess that keeps me from loving God with my heart, soul, and mind and strength, and loving my neighbor as myself? How might I address that over the next 40 days? And for me, like you mentioned earlier with the to-do lists, I'm a planner and I want to know the next step. And I want to know, if that next step doesn't happen, what's the plan B? And if plan B can't happen, we're going to have plan C. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very anxious person. I've been that way my whole life. And so for me personally, I am meditating on knowing that every second of my life, I'm on the path that my creator is wanting me to be on. And that everything that has led me to this moment created an opportunity for me to get here. And the whatever it is that I'm in right now is preparing me. And everything is working out. If I believe that the God that I believe in is a good God and wants good things for me.
Mm.
And so the God that I put my faith in doesn't want me to be anxious, doesn't want me to lose sleep over tomorrow. And so for me, I'm really learning, if I believe that this is a God that wants the best for me in every second, then that means that right now is the best for me,
Mm.
even if things aren't as what I want them to be. But that's something that I've started meditating on. And
Wow.
it's hard, but I've already felt freedom. Not all the time, but there's like 2 seconds of freedom from anxiety that I feel. And if I can feel 2 seconds of freedom today, probably tomorrow I can feel 3, and then maybe 4. And that's more than I was able to experience a week ago. So I
Yeah.
think 4 seconds is a good thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Sarah. I love that. So we want to, before we wrap up, we want to loop back. The whole time we've been looping, just so you know, back to you as you've been listening again on the premiere, on one of the replays. However this story found you, we literally said a prayer, a blessing that this story get to you if it was meant for you. And so if it got to you, there's destiny in it and there's something for you. So before we wrap up, we want to really invite you to take a moment to kind of do a little, like, rewind the film of the story that Sarah shared today, and just kind of note, like, what is a moment or two that you were pricked, that your stomach got tight or your tears came to your eyes, and just kind of go on a treasure hunt to see what part of this story was meant for you. Because I profoundly believe that we find our way, we find our stories in this connection, in the stories of each other. Our lives get shaped by each other. It's like the best news ever. We don't have to find it alone. And so as part of that, we really want to invite you to kind of allow, if you know what it is right now, awesome. But kind of be looking in the hours to come after you watch this, and allow one act of a step of inspired action to come your way, because that it just solidifies the things that are brewing in us. It just kind of keeps things fresh. It keeps us kind of engaged. It keeps us part of our own story. So please kind of, if you know what it is, post it below, message Sarah or me or both of us, and share it with a live person. That is super key. This digital thing is amazing, but share it with a live person that can be like, hey, do you remember how you were hearing that story for about the 3-minute hug? And here's what you shared. We can keep each other, remind each other. We're witnesses for each other, for each other's journeys. So please do that. And the other thing that is really important to both Sarah and me is that we know that the border and these families that Sarah has talked about, we know that that is not the only place where people are separated and where there is pain and where there is heartache. We know that people around the world, being human is a hard place sometimes. So if you are listening to this and you are in one of those heartbreak moments, Sarah and I want to just say we want to send love and prayers your way. If you're willing to reach out to us in whatever means you can, all the contact info is in the write-up. Please do and ask for some support, some love, some prayer. Please tell a live person in your world. I just believe the darker the day, the more we need each other. So don't go it alone. Yeah, don't go it alone. So, Sarah, I would love before we officially wrap, will you share one last story, seed, a Sarah seed with us before we wrap up? What's one word you want to leave us with?
Well, the first word that just popped into my mind was hope.
Awesome.
And there's times where I need to be reminded of it. And I think that's why that word just popped into my brain.
That's awesome. Yeah. So take this Sarah seed word of hope, all of you that are watching, and may hope grow and take root in your life. And may you share this hope with other people in your unique, one-of-a-kind way. And we just want to remind you before we wrap that you're loved, that you belong, that we belong to each other. And we invite you to donate to this fundraiser, to connect with all of our various ways of social media and emails and all the things. It's all in the write-up. Stay connected to us and to each other. And I believe when we do that, we stand tall and we light up the world. So thank you for listening, for watching, friends. We love you and can't wait to catch up with you next time. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome. Thank you, Sarah.